Hey, how you doing? Justin here. That's what we're going to be looking at today. A small little cycle to help you get your dancing fingers on. Now, what I mean by that is if you're following the little Legato primer series so far, you should be making very deliberate movements. So pick, hammer, hammer. Really trying to get those hammers on nice and hard. Try not to pick too hard to get the notes as even as you can. Same with the flick-offs. Now, when you start to get faster, it feels less, not less controlled, but less deliberate, perhaps. And the way I feel about it is that it becomes very relaxed. This way feels quite tense, like I'm really thinking about getting the muscles down and flicking them off and using that feeling. But when it gets a bit faster, it wants to become much more relaxed, and tension becomes the enemy. I think you need to go through that stage first of all to get the technique right, to get the feeling right, to be aware of the volume and the dynamic of the notes, the timing, all of that stuff. But eventually you want to try and get used to that kind of more relaxed dancing feeling. And when you've got that feeling, then you want to reapply it again to all of those exercises that you might have done in the past. So the pattern that I'm recommending that you start off with is the middle two strings of that G major scale. So 4th fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, 4, 5, 7, then flick off on the same string and then pick on the 4th string. Flick, flick, hammer, hammer, pick, hammer, hammer, flick, flick, pick, flick, flick, hammer, hammer. Okay, so we only pick when we go to a new string. I don't care whether you use hammer-ons or flick-offs or your fingers or whatever you want. But the important things are that you only pick when you go to a new string. It's perfectly possible to do this with a metronome using different subdivisions. But for this exercise, what I want you to get is that really relaxed feeling. So I'm not that worried about the timekeeping side of it. Okay, we'll reapproach that when we start applying this concept to the scale to make up some licks and stuff. The first step is just really to do it nice and relaxed. Let's do that in a close-up. Okay, so to start this pattern, let's just run through what the notes are. So we're going to be playing the 4th fret, 5th fret, 7th fret. We'll probably pick that first note. Hammer, hammer. Then pick, hammer, hammer. That's 4, 5, 7. Flick, flick. Okay, so on that 3rd string, it's going to be pick, hammer, hammer, flick, flick. Then we're going to pick on the 7th fret of the 4th string, pick, flick, flick, hammer, hammer. Then pick, hammer, hammer, flick, flick. Pick, flick, flick, hammer, hammer, pick, hammer, hammer, flick, flick. Now when you start, you want to keep it still nice and deliberate. So very much pick, hammer, hammer, hammer down hard, hammer down hard, flick off hard. Right, really make it deliberate. Now, there's still quite a lot of tension in my hand at that point, and that's the thing that you want to start removing in order to help you play faster. So starting like that, see if you can start to speed it up a little bit. Now, as soon as I start speeding it up, what I find is that it all gets a little bit quieter, but that's okay so long as it's even. So I'm having to pick a little bit softer as well. Now, as soon as I get to here, now I'm starting to feel much more relaxed. It's actually easier to play that little line at that speed than it is going, because that all feels really deliberate, and what you want to be looking for is this relaxed. It really feels a lot more like it's just flowing. There's a lot less tension. Sometimes I get a little bit sore there in the muscle between my thumb and my first finger. Probably means I'm pressing a little bit too hard, but it's all just I'm trying to concentrate on keeping it as relaxed as I can. Now, I'm not using a lot of distortion here. If you use a lot of gain, you'll find it easier to get the notes nice and even because it'll kind of compress more, but you're also going to risk having a lot more noise, which is another one of the dangers. So I would recommend actually practicing both with a slightly cleaner sound, or maybe a completely clean sound, and then a high gain sound as well, because the high gain sound will really expose if you've got any strings ringing out that you shouldn't have. So this little pattern is a really effective little tool that you can use to create lots of different licks. So I would recommend a couple of weeks really working on this, trying to get your hand relaxed. That's the key thing. Try and get the feeling for it going from a real tense, very deliberate, conscious hand movement where it's very kind of strong to very, very relaxed. That'll happen a little bit with the speed. So it's a little bit, riding a bicycle slowly is difficult. So at that initial stage, there's going to be a crossover where you've gone from the really deliberate thing and you're like, well, I can't relax, I can't go faster. The key to going faster is relaxing, but that feels like something that's very difficult to do. It's a practice thing. You have to just keep trying. If you find that you're really having trouble breaking out of the tension part, it can be helpful to try and go way faster than you really can, just to get the feeling of it. Right? So ignore the fact that you're trying to get the notes clear and that you're worrying about the muted notes and all of that sort of stuff. All of that stuff that I think is really important. Just forget about it for a little while and try and work on relaxing the hand and getting the fingers moving in a really floaty, relaxed, dancing fashion. You want to try and recapture that feeling while staying aware of all of that other stuff that's really important, that making sure the notes aren't ringing out too much, or that making sure the notes are even, that the timing is okay, and all of that stuff. Timing for this, like I said, you can put it to a metronome if you want, either triplets or 16th notes or groups of 6. It ends up feeling like it wants to be groups of 5 because there are 5 notes on each string. So you might end up with like hippopotamus, 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 hippopotamus. And if you do it, hippopotamus being a 5-syllable word that you can use to help you develop the groups of 5 to the metronome click. And if you do that, then you are playing the picked note with the metronome. Okay, so tick, 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 tick. The problem with practicing in 5s is that as soon as you start to expand the pattern, this little kind of cycling shape, onto other parts of the scales, you're going to break the cycle of 5s, and then you end up having to play 5s all the time, which is more difficult and less, I'm going to say less musical. That's not really the right term. I'm not sure what I mean, but it's more common to use triplets and 16th notes as a kind of a groove. Grooves of 5 is kind of getting into either, fusion or heavy metal or prog or whatever, which if that's what you want to do, it's something definitely that you should consider practicing, but it's a lot harder. And if you're kind of a blues rock guy that's looking for some interesting ways of developing a bit more chopsy stuff into that blues rock style, then you probably want to be sticking with triplets and 16th notes. So at least a few weeks working on this, okay? At least. Until you feel nice and relaxed and comfortable, I don't recommend that you take that any further, because this is a real simple pattern. It's not stretchy. You might want to explore doing some other stretchy patterns, so applying this same idea to other parts of the scale if you wanted to. That would be a more advanced thing. But really, I'd recommend just sticking with it, keeping it nice and simple, and working on just that one little pattern and cycling it over and over again. So hope you're enjoying this series. Again, do let me know in the comments if you're enjoying it. Hit that subscribe button if you like what I do. If you're over on YouTube, I really appreciate your support, and I'll see you for plenty more in this series very soon. Remember, there's loads of hints and tips and tabs and all that sort of stuff over on the website as well. Link in the description. See you for more very soon. Take care. Bye bye.